Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, this is for anybody who is an author of a nonfiction book and has maybe pondered, maybe you didn't even think about doing an audiobook version of your book. You can do it. Like literally, I mean, you do it with your voice. And this guy can coach you and help you with everything you need. You don't even have to book a studio. He sends the equipment to you. You just plug it in, plug and play, super simple. We're going to talk about that today and also the fear that a lot of people have in recording an audiobook. That shouldn't be there. It's not justified. Robert Lane from Robert Lane Coaching joins us once again. Hey, Robert, how are you?
Good. Glad to be here. And yeah, fear is a pretty powerful thing. It's a limiting thing that keeps us from moving forward and doing the things that we want to do, and keeping us from doing things that we are capable of doing, but we convince ourselves that we're not. And I do see this quite a bit in the audiobook world. As a coach, I get authors who come to me and they talk to me and they're like, yeah, I don't think I have the voice to do it, or I don't feel comfortable, talking in a microphone. And, even when they're alone in their own recording space, it still is an issue because there's this fear of public speaking, and that bleeds through, even when you're just recording by yourself, and it just creates this barrier. So we need to break those barriers down. We need to crush these fears and build confidence. And that once you're able to do that, then you can, your audiobook will just be off the charts. It takes your book from being, an average audiobook to something that's just so compelling and so engaging for your listeners, from beginning to end, because you're bringing that confidence. You were confident when you wrote your book. Mm-hmm. As a nonfiction author, you published this great book, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. You have this compelling story that you want to tell and share with the world. An audiobook is no different. You were taking the same energy, you're taking the same drive and purpose, the core reason of why you wrote the book in the first place. You're bringing all that through when you do your audiobooks. So it's just taking your book to the next level. So fear is something.
I'm glad you said that, Robert, about the confidence that you had when you wrote the book. And even if you didn't have a lot of confidence in the beginning, when you got it published, that was a lift up there, I'm sure, in somebody's confidence. And fear is, nobody likes fear. and nobody likes change. So you're kind of changing your method of operation here by recording an audiobook. But look at the positives of doing it. And again, you hold somebody's hand through the entire process. So it's not like we're pushing you out on the tightrope and you got to navigate to get to the other side. You're with them the entire step of the way. And you're also the safety net in case something happens. What could happen? Maybe the audio in the room that you're in maybe has an echo. So you address that. Those are the little things. There's nothing else that can stand in your way. There really isn't. And the equipment thing has always been one. How do I hook it up? You have step-by-step instructions. It's easy nowadays to get this done, right?
Absolutely. It's, when I created the Your Book, Your Voice audiobook coaching program, the whole point of it is to remove the hassle and the frustration and the overwhelm and fear. And anything that may be holding you back as an author to narrate your own audiobook, so that all you really need to focus is just doing a great narration. Anything that's technical, that's what we handle with the audiobook coaching program. When you record your files, you send them to me. As an audio editor, I clean them up and make sure they are to the exact specifications for publication. And then I take your files and I get you published on Audible, Amazon, and Apple Books. I do the uploading of the files for you, make sure everything is fine. So you're guaranteed 100% to be published on those three major platforms. And you need to be on those anyway, because those are the most popular and people ask for them by brand name. Are you on Audible? Hey, can I get your book on your audiobook on Apple Books? So it's really important to be on Audible, Amazon, and Apple Books. So, but you're right. I'm there as your safety net. I'm there to hold your hand, in a sense, through the process, because that's what a coach does, and that's what makes what I do, I feel, very unique, as opposed to any of the other companies or other book publishers who say, "Oh, sure, we'll do an audiobook for you," but they don't give you the coaching, like the real coaching, so that you are doing a fantastic job. And you know what? Honestly, I've been looking at some of the other ones, and they cost way more than what I charge. It's kind of funny.
And I could almost imagine that they don't have the personalized attention that you have. I want to add here too that you're not just a guy that helps you record stuff. You're a coach by nature, by trade. This is what you did coaching before. Now you've been doing audio editing for decades. So that's one aspect of your life. But coaching is the other side of it. And coaching for even these things like fear is something not even connected to audiobooks, by the way, but fear in general is something that you've helped people with along the way. You wrote a book, and isn't that one of the chapters in your book?
Yeah, actually, my book, it's called Lights Action You. This is more of a career coaching approach. But again, the tools and techniques that are in this book are things that you can apply as an author to do your audiobook, but you can also apply the same techniques to your life in general. So if you're listening and you're an author, great. If you want to do an audiobook, absolutely. Get in touch with me. Go to robertlanecoaching.com and book a call. I want to talk to you. But if you're not an author and you happen to be listening, I'm going to give you some techniques about how to deal with fear. And I think this is really important because, again, there's always something that's holding us back, and we need to be able to overcome these fears. So there is a chapter in my book that I do talk about it, and I have a catchphrase. I have a lot of catchphrases. But this catchphrase for this, in regards to dealing with fear, is face it, embrace it, purge it, replace it. Those are the steps. Face it, embrace it, purge it, replace it. So let's dive into that a little bit. First of all, facing your fear. Now, we'll use public speaking as an example, since I am an audiobook coach, and being uncomfortable talking in front of a microphone is an issue that I do come up with a lot. So let's take that. All right, so the first step is to face your fear. What is it that caused, what is the root cause? You got to strip away the layers, and you obviously have to be honest with yourself too. So you got to strip away the layers and get down to the core cause of, why are you afraid to speak in front of somebody? What is the fear? You really have to not only identify, but you need to face it. What is the fear? Was it something when you were a kid? Did your mom sign you up for to give a speech in front of a class or something, and you're really shy and introverted, and that was just a traumatic experience? That could have been the core reason, and that could be something that has stuck with you your entire life, and why you have that fear. So it could be something that's way back in your past, or it could be something recent too. But you need to face the fear. Strip away the layers, get down to the root cause. What is the fear? You need to face it. Part two now is embracing the fear. And I say embrace. People normally say, I confront my fears. But confronting is, that's an aggressive word. So I say embrace. You got to embrace your fear. Meaning, what that really means is that you're coming to terms with this fear, whatever the cause is, whatever that root cause is, you're coming to terms with it. You've identified it, you're facing it, and now you're coming to terms with it. You're understanding it. This is where you're working through it. So you're not confronting fear, you're embracing it. And there's ways to do it. You can, a lot of people journal, they write it out. Like, what is your fear? I have a fear of public speaking. Why? Get down to the root cause, write about it. Talk about it. For me, my mind goes faster than I can write. So maybe if I'm dealing with something, I'll talk it out, because it helps me, again, face it and then embrace it. So when you're embracing that fear, when you're coming to terms with what it is that's stopping you from moving forward, the next step is purging it. And what this means, you don't necessarily, like, the fear just doesn't just magically disappear, because it will come up depending on what it is. If you have a fear of public speaking and maybe you have to, do a presentation, that fear may come back. But now you have a tool of, like, okay, well, I'm going to face the fear. I know what my root cause is. I'm going to embrace it. In other words, acknowledge the fear. And now I'm going to work through it. And when you're working through it, you're I say purge it, but you're moving it aside. You're working through it so you can purge it, so you can move it aside. And when you do that, then the fourth step is, you got face it, embrace it, purge it, now replace it. You're replacing your fear with positive affirmations. That's one thing that's really, really important. And that's where you have to say things like, I am a great narrator. I have an awesome voice. I love my voice. I am 100% confident. I am so happy and grateful that I have a fantastic story that I've written about, and now I'm going to say it. I'm going to speak my story. Say things that are going to build confidence. Give those positive affirmations into you're saying them into your subconscious, and you're ingraining that into your subconscious. That's what's replacing, the fear of I can't. Let's get rid of I can't. We're going to say I can, because you can. You really can. And so you face your fear, you embrace it, you purge it, and you replace it. So you're facing it, you're acknowledging it, you're working through it, you're pushing it to the side so that you can bring in positivity and bring in that confidence. Because when you're doing these positive affirmations, you're building confidence. That's part of the confidence building technique. And that will help you do a great narration, because now you are feeling confident. And when you feel confident, you feel comfortable. When you're comfortable, you're going to be more conversational, and you're going to be more authentic and be your true authentic self. And that's very important, because people want to hear the real you. They don't want to hear a poser. They don't want to hear, for us radio guys, the Gary Owen voice. Going way back.
Oh my God. Oh, listen, when I first started in radio, that's what I heard. Like, stop sounding like an announcer. I'm doing what I think I should be doing. But eventually that got stripped away. What you're saying, I never forgot this fear: false evidence appearing real. I love the acronym.
Yes.
Because you invent all these things in your head that aren't true. Like, one of the number one things, truly number one thing that most people fear, or maybe top three, is public speaking in all surveys that are done. And you might be thinking, oh, this is kind of the same thing, but you're speaking in front of one person, that's it. There's no public speaking here. You're taking care of it on the back end. You're not even doing it live. You're recording. So, we can abolish that, fear. There's no worries here. instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com if you want to reach us. Let's do this one. Amanda from Seaview, New Jersey says, I wrote a book that's sold pretty well. I've thought about doing an audiobook, but I have a pretty heavy accent. Would that be a challenge?
Well, the first thing that I do with any potential client who's interested in doing an audiobook is talk to them. So the first step is to book a call. It's a free call. We talk about your book. We'll talk about issues. If an accent is an issue, 9 out of 10 times it hasn't been. I've dealt with people who have accents, but you know what? It actually enhances their read, because that's what makes you you. That's part of what makes you unique. Now, obviously, if it's, if you want to speak your book in English and you have an incredibly heavy accent and it really is hard to understand, then we address the issue and we talk about options that you have to be able to still get your audiobook out there. And and then we just take it to the next step. But so the first step really is just to book a call with me, talk with me, Let's figure out what your book is about, what your marketing goals are about. If you have concerns, if you have confidence concerns, accent concerns, anything like we're talking about fear, we'll definitely talk about it on the call, because I want you to be 100% in, and you have to be to do this, because my coaching program is 6 weeks, and it may seem like a lot of time, but you know what? It's not. You have to be focused and do the work, and you will get it done. Now, this is better than a lot of the other audiobook places that create, they're like 6 months, 8 months. You can get this done in 6 weeks. You can be published in Audible, Amazon, and Apple Books in 6 weeks. You just put your mind to it, and you can do it. And again, that's why you have a coach, because I'm there for every step of the way. But again, that is a good question about accents. That is something that we would talk about, and there are options. So
Sure.
Don't let that stop you.
I've talked with a lot of people that have said that they're concerned about their accent. One woman in particular recently is from Canada and has a French accent, and she's always worried about it. And I say to her, I understand every single word you're saying, and it's endearing. It's something a little bit different.
Right.
The only difference is when she's speaking, sometimes she has to think a little bit, but you don't have to think, because you're reading along the way. And that another thought here is, if you do have an accent, a lot of times if you just slow down a little bit, it comes through much clearer. And that's probably true for English as well. So, there's little things. Pacing's right. Yeah. Yep. There's a lot of things that can be done to help you out. Other thoughts on fear,
Sure.
Robert? What do you got?
Yeah, absolutely. There is one thing that I tell my clients to do. That, it's in one of my video modules in my program, and that is having a specific person in mind when you're reading your book. That takes away a lot of the fear, and that actually builds a lot of confidence. When you're reading your book, don't think, okay, this is my genre. This is my market. This is who I'm reading to. No, you're reading to a very specific person. Who is that person? What is their name? How long have you known them? Are they a family member, a friend, a coworker, your husband, wife, partner? Who is this person that you're telling your story to? Be specific and let it be a real person. That's who you're talking to, and that's what you have to have in mind when you're reading. Have a picture of that person on your computer so you can actually see them and you're talking with them, because what that does is it does boost confidence. It makes you more conversational. You're definitely being your authentic self. You're being true, the person that you are, and your delivery is going to be natural. And that's what people pick up on. It's those things, it's those subtleties. And when you have somebody specific in mind, that takes away a lot of the fear, because you're comfortable talking to that person.
Even put a picture, find a random picture, whether it's your spouse, partner, or just a person. Could be anybody. You don't even know them. Could be a stranger, but it represents who you feel is your demographic for the book. Put it up in front of the microphone, just so so it feels like you're talking to them. I wanted to ask you, I don't think I've ever asked this question, but what if you're finishing up a book, but you're not published yet? Can you do an audiobook for a book that's not published? Your first publication would be the audiobook?
You can. The process is a little bit different in regards to getting it published, but that is an option.
Okay.
I actually prefer the author to have their book published first, whether it's ebook, paperback, or hardcover. It makes the audiobook process a little bit easier, because basically, to be published in Audible, Amazon, and Apple Books, what happens is that you set up an account for publishing on those 3 platforms, and what it does is it goes to Kindle actually and pulls the information from your book into the setup that you need to do for your audiobook. So it does make it a little bit easier in regards to doing that. I mean, you can, but there are some people, or actually what you can do is once you do your book and you have it up there uploaded, maybe your launch date is, let's say you're going to publish your book in, in October, for example, and it's September, and you can still upload your book and have it, your ebook, paperback, and hardcover published, uh, meaning it's live. It doesn't mean that that's your launch date. You can have it up there, but then you have this whole big launch party, and you're going to promote your book, and it's okay to have it up there live. Don't promote it that it's up there until your launch date, but at least everything is okay. You can do the same thing with the audiobook as well. So once your book is done, and you're not going to be making any more manuscript changes, then you can record the audiobook, and then you can have a launch date for everything if you want. You can plan it. It's marketing and planning, really.
Yeah, and I even love that idea. If you're working on a book, or maybe working on your second book, and are thinking about an audiobook, you could record that. It's, let's say your book is just about done, but not published yet. You could record the audiobook, get that bank that to the side, launch your book. So it seems like it's an easier transition to get the audiobook up, and then immediately following after that is the audiobook. Does that make sense? Would that work?
Yeah, sure, you can do it that way. Or, if you're writing your second book and your first book's not an audiobook, you should record your first book, put it out there, do a big launch with that to, get people excited about you as an author again, and then you have this other book that's coming out. So you could already be promoting, the fact that you have a new book coming out. But in the meantime, check this out. So there's a lot of ways that you can, plan your marketing strategies.
How about, I know we're talking about fear, going to pivot for just a sec, because my brain works that way. And sometimes I think creatively, or at least I think I am. What can you do that's a little bit different? Has anybody done something a little bit different in their audiobook? Let's say a theme song to start the audiobook, and then it fades out, and then now it's the audiobook. Has anybody done anything a little bit different, or you've gotten interesting requests for audiobook recording?
I've heard some books that have included music.
What about two authors?
Okay. So yeah, I have dealt with that. 9 out of 10 times, one of the two will do the narration.
Okay.
However, I am working with another author who, the way his book is set up is he has like this mock interview. And so he is going to bring in a second voice to be represent the people being interviewed, just to give it a little, difference in voice. And that's fine too. Ultimately, you just have to think about think about it from the reader's or the listener's standpoint. What is going to keep their interest? If you have a lot of bells and whistles, that's great, but is that going to distract from the message that you're really trying to get out there, especially as a nonfiction author? So it's just something you have to really think about. If you're doing fiction, or there was a radio guy who did a book, and he had clips from musical guests and stuff like that, and that was cool. That fit. That made a lot of sense. But if you're doing a book about how I overcame a toxic work environment, I don't know if having theme music is really going to enhance your story.
Point. And I just had a flash here that the goal is the intimate experience of the author sharing his or her book with you.
Yes.
The reader. So in an intimate, speaking experience, like we're having a conversation here, we don't have bells and whistles and things going off. So, I guess it boils back to the basics. It's somebody telling you, call it a story, or telling you information that they've put together as their book, which you're interested in. I guess why would you want to get that, things get in the way? If there's a reason for it, like you said, the mock interview, if there's a reason for it, then okay, that's a little bit different, but the basics are okay. The basics are okay.
Right. You wrote a great book. As a nonfiction author, you wrote a great book, you published this awesome book, people are buying it, they're reading it, they're enjoying your story, they're learning your coaching techniques if it's a coaching book, or your poetry if you're a poet. Yeah, you have a story to tell. So that in itself is engaging.
Yeah.
So just taking it to the next level is you speaking your book in your own voice, in the way that you want it to be heard, the way that you intended it to be heard. That's why you need to narrate your own book, because only you can put your unique stamp on it.
Have no fear. He's got you.
And have no fear.
Have no fear. Just go to the website and start the conversation. The coach is in. Where do we go?
Go to robertlanecoaching.com. It's real simple. And remember, action takers are success makers. So that's a simple action step. If you're thinking about turning your book into an audiobook, book a free call with me. We have a quick little assessment, talk about your book, and then get you enrolled and get you going, get you published on Audible, Amazon, and Apple Books.
How exciting. And I'm always honest and transparent about everything. If I could think of something that an author would fear or should, reasonably fear about this process, I would say it. I can't think of one thing. You've thought of everything already. And it's just follow the steps and listen to the coach, and you're on the AAA, and getting your book out there.
The AAA, that's right. Audible, Amazon, and Apple Books. It is the AAA.
It's awesome. Robert, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Steve. Thank you so much.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.